Everybody, so we are up live.
Pine Avenue to Indianapolis Boulevard. A crash has the right lane blocked. The trip time between the Indiana Toll Road and the Bishop Ford Freeway is 19 minutes. Eastbound, it's 14. Traffic is building on the inbound Stevenson approaching the Rhine. It's now 23 minutes between the Veterans Memorial Tollway and DeSable Lakeshore Drive. On Ryan, 12 minutes from 95th to downtown. Kennedy, Eisenhower traffic is building until moving without significant delays. I'm Calamonte.
Okay, very good. All right. Reverend. Okay. So, Devin?
Yes, Santita.
If you can get doctors for Holden and Knighton up about 6:10, I'm really trying to abbreviate these headlines.
6:10. Okay, I'll make a note.
Yep.
Anything else? Mucinex 12-hour DM extended release.
So we can, because I'm going to come right to Reverend Dr. Yeri, and we will, so we can get. We're trying to move the clock along just a little faster. Hi, LaJean. How you doing?
60 seconds.
As low as $0 and 90-day refills because we care about Medicare.
Okay, got that.
I mean, do you really care to hear me go on about same-day prescription delivery making your life easier? Or how there's a pharmacy expert available 24/7 and one-click refills? Well, I just did anyways. Fill your Medicare prescriptions with Walgreens and save.
$0 copays apply to Tier 1 generic drugs and select plans with Walgreens as a preferred pharmacy. Restrict care for complete details.
WCPT 820, where facts matter.
My name is Tom.
My name is Cindy.
We give to and volunteer with United Way at our community free health clinic.
We know our time and money are going to the right places.
10 seconds.
We live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today. Monday, February 7, 2022. I'm coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, the air-to-air America. That's what we used to be, but we've evolved into WCPT, the heart of progressive talk radio, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you all to meet me on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel, and meet me on Twitter at SantitaJ, and my official Facebook page is Santita Jackson and Friends. Everybody, please go over there as well. Hey, Michael, Ann, and Paula, and Daryl and Carol from the left coast, not me. Oh, my friends out there. It's so wonderful to be with you today. Of course, we're going to be talking about the NFL, the Brian Flores case. What do you think about that? We're going to go into some history with Jack Silverstein. He's a Chicago sports historian. In fact, I was reading an article of his from 2019. I was unaware of the fact that for 12 years, for example, blacks were excluded from the NFL. They started the league with black players. Then there was a decision made in part by George Halas, one of the fathers of the league, to exclude blacks from the league. So we're going to be talking about that, the history, the roots of racism in sport, in football specifically, run really, really, really deep. And so we're going to talk about what he thinks, and of course with Jerry Riles, a favorite here and family member here at WCPT, and Reverend Dr. Joseph Bryant, head of the sports project at Rainbow Push, about what all of this means. And then, of course, Amir Locke, 22-year-old young black man shot to death while he was sleeping on his cousin's sofa. He was about to move to Dallas so he could be closer to his mother. That happened in Minneapolis, St. Paul. His parents and many others are calling it an execution. We're going to be talking about that. This is why you need a justice in policing, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, everybody, because this would prevent no-knock entrances into people's homes. Can you imagine how disconcerting that is? So let's get to some of these headlines so we can get to good news from Pastor Todd Yeri and, of course, doctors Holden, and Knighton will be giving us the skinny on, you know what it is, on COVID and all of these other vaccines and health measures that we need to be taking. And Chicago will have a high of 26 degrees today, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 21 degrees, partly cloudy. In the NBA, as we await the Super Bowl this weekend, the Timberwolves 118, the Pistons 105. Yay, but the Bulls, well, they fell to the 76ers. The 76ers 119 and the Bulls 108. Coronavirus protests in Canada. It has spread from Ottawa, the capital of Canada, all across Canada. Protests against COVID-19 restrictions grew over the weekend as authorities faced mounting pressure to address blocked roads and increasingly disruptive demonstrations. The mayor of Ottawa declared a state of emergency yesterday following 2 weeks of protests, as I said, that are spreading. And remember, we share a border. We share borders, states and towns with Canada. I mean, Montana. I mean, think about our supply chain. This is big. These truckers are not playing, they mean business. Mark Short, the former chief of staff for Mike Pence, says the former vice president chose to rebuke former President Donald Trump last week because his comments about Pence's ability to overturn the 2020 election merited response. In his words, Pence called out his former boss by name on Friday, saying that the president, quote, is wrong, close quote, in claiming that the then vice president had the right to overturn the election. Democratic senators Joe Manchin and Democratic Senator Joe Manchin and Republican Lisa Murkowski are signaling optimism about their work to reform the Electoral Count Act, with Manchin going so far as to say it will absolutely pass. The act specifically makes changes to a 19th century law that was intended to give Congress a process to certify the electoral college votes submitted by the states. Election law experts and those urging reform have repeatedly warned that in light of the attack on the U.S. Capitol, the law needs to be updated and strengthened to ensure that a losing party can never subvert the result of the electoral college. And it looks like we're going to have Queen Consort Camilla. Well, not us, but certainly the people of Great Britain. That was the decision made by Britain's reigning monarch of 70 years as she celebrates her jubilee. Queen Elizabeth has made that decision. We'll see how all that plays out. Pastor Todd Geary, how you doing today?
Good morning, Santita, Queen Consort. Yeah, they have interesting titles up there. I have to give it to our British cousins across the water. They have titles. You know, if they come to a family reunion, ain't nobody calling her Queen Consort. They're gonna be like, "Is that who? Is that?" No, for real? Yeah, that's
Okay.
You know, I'm just saying, and you know, it's Monday, so y'all pray for me. I had church yesterday. I pushed the reset button. We got to start over. But otherwise, all is well. It sounds like things are thawing out there, so I can come visit the great Midwest now that it doesn't look like or feel like an iceberg. So I'm looking forward to coming there real soon. So as you're talking about important things this week, I want to get to a little conversation this morning to all of your listeners. So let's go on and get to it. Come on now. Good morning, Chicago. Morning, Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Hello. Hello, hello. It's Monday morning. Time to get up, get going, wake up, put your feet on the floor, feel the coolness of the towel coming back. Take a deep breath, fill your lungs with, here it is, L-I-F-E. Fill it with life. You're alive. Time to get moving. You're on an assignment to change the world, and it's time to get going. Go ahead and get that morning brew going. Get that morning beverage started. Drink your water. Got to stay hydrated so that you can do what you've been created to do. So let's get to it so you can get on your way. You know, the Super Bowl is this coming Sunday. And as you look at who the two teams are, I noticed that they're not necessarily coming from the same perspective. The Rams, they've had a pretty good season all season. You look at their competitiveness over the last couple of years, they've been kind of in the mix. The Bengals, on the other hand, have been kind of the unlikely dancer at the party. And a couple of years ago, the Bengals had the worst record in football. Yeah, the worst record in football. 2 years later, they are in the Super Bowl. How does that happen? How can you go from worst to first in just a couple of years. I think there's a principle there that I want to share as everybody gets started today, and it's a growth principle. It kind of flows with this understanding of a growth stock. A growth stock has great potential, shows great value, is going to become more valuable over time, and it's sustainable. I want to suggest to all of your listeners, Santita, that they are growth stocks. You are a growth stock. You are a commodity of value that has the benefit and the opportunity to change the world, and your commitment is going to help you grow over time and enhance the value of everything that you touch. That means then that you have to be sustainable. Sustainability is what we would call mindset, your attitude is going to have more to affect your altitude than your aptitude ever will. And so if your mindset's right, if your focus is right, you're going to grow in this season. And growth happens over time, not in a day, but over many days. And so you have to remain this one thing today, optimistic. I want you to stay optimistic in spite of what might happen or come across your path, because as we find out in the book called Stronger, active optimism is really like body armor to negative thoughts. And so it is your optimism that helps you to build the antibodies of negative thoughts. As we've been talking about resisting a pandemic, resist the negativity that folks will try to drop, right? Sometimes folks like to drop breadcrumbs and other stuff in your yard. Don't let folks seed your good thoughts with negative thoughts. You stay positive and supercharge your optimism for your growth, because you are a growth stock with high value. And so what I want you to do is to always recognize that what you've come through has made you better for this moment. When you look back at your past record, even though you may have been worse a couple of seasons ago, you get ready to play in the Super Bowl in a few days. Why? Because you were committed to growth and you were optimistic. And if you need a tagline to remember this, the scriptures declare that with God, all things are possible. Don't back down. Don't change your mind. Don't get frustrated. Stay optimistic. Go change the world, because you're a world changer, and I'm cheering you on. Have a great day, Santita. Thanks for letting me hang out with you this morning.
From worst to first. It can happen to all of us, everybody. God bless you, Pastor Todd Urey, Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, Esquire, pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore, Maryland, Senior Vice President at Rainbow Push. From worst to first, be optimistic. We have got, of course, Dr. Deborah Holden, epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, and infection preventionist, registered nurse, research scholar at Case Western Reserve University, Dr. Shanita Knighton. Let us start with you, Dr. Deborah Holden. We have got the news that the world has surpassed 10 billion vaccine doses, and yet there's real resistance to getting booster shots in the United States. And we had increased cases of COVID in Beijing at the bubble in the Olympics, but now those cases are going down. It's an up and down thing that we get every day. But you have, there is a special program that you have, the In Nice program. And I said, let's carve out some time to specifically talk about that today, because Dr. Knighton and I have been pulled into that program with you under your leadership. What is it?
Hey, good morning to both of you, and I'm very grateful that you both joined me on the project. I'll tell you, it's nothing like being able to work with your buddies and the people that you already admire and respect, Makes those Zooms go a little bit faster as we try to brainstorm how we're going to move the needle on some of this stuff. So thanks to you both. But the NICE it stands for the National Network to Innovate for COVID and Other Adult Vaccine Equity. And the reason we say COVID and other adult vaccine is because clearly there is a push afoot and has been for, a while by our government to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And you remember very early on when the vaccine became available, we had massive problems around getting that vaccine to people fairly and equitably in the order that they were eligible. Remember when it first came out, it was only for people over a certain age or who were frontline healthcare workers. And then we started to create these eligibility groups. But there were a lot of people, a lot of elderly people, elderly people in underserved communities who just said, you know, it's my turn, but I can't get it. I've been waiting, stuck on a wait list, or I went to go get my shot and they said they didn't have any more. I went back on the list and I still haven't made it off the list. And I think that really did us some harm, because I think what happened is a lot of people said, why bother? You know, you remember when I got vaccinated, I wasn't one of these people who was, you know, shoving people's head to the side trying to rush to the front of the line. I got an opportunity and I was still very reluctant and sort of like, not really sure. I think I'm a no for right now. And then the opportunity came up, so I had to quickly reevaluate and make that choice. Now I made the choice that made sense for me, and I ultimately was a yes, and I went and got vaccinated. Well, now we are in a complete and total different scenario. We've got way more supply of vaccines than we do demand. We've got this issue now with, you know, this evolving definition or criteria for being fully vaccinated, right? So technically the definition hasn't changed, but for many employers and in many spaces where you would need to be, they have said if you want to be deemed fully vaccinated, you have to be both vaccinated and boosted. And we're having problems. You know, a lot of people who are vaccinated that are booster eligible have not gotten their booster. And we still have a significant proportion of the population who are vaccine eligible that remain unvaccinated. So what we're trying to do with the NNICE is make sure that, one, we level the playing field and that everybody who wants the vaccine has fair, equitable access to it. And then also to elevate and raise up the profile and the cause of not just the COVID vaccine, but all the other vaccinations that are part of the adult vaccine schedule. It goes back to that problem I think that we've really leaned all the way into during COVID, which is we've talked a lot about COVID, and we really haven't dealt with many other things. You know, we had Heart Health Day on February 4th, and all of us and all of our colleagues wore blue, and, you know, we all took the pledge to do something good for our hearts this month, you know, whether it be to exercise or give it the right kind of fat and reduce the kind of bad fat. And you know, everybody just made a pledge to be good to your heart this month. And so the NNICE wants to remind folks that there are other vaccines in the adult vaccine schedule. They include the flu, and people know about the flu vaccine, but they also include pneumonia, include shingles. We now have vaccines for hepatitis. There's so many things that are available now, and other things that were pre-existing that are part of the adult vaccine schedule that most people don't know about. So the goal here is to work through grassroots, community-based organizations to get the word out for people. And what we've been able to do is be very creative and not just talk to people about vaccines, but use other community needs as an entree to have conversations with people, but then also raise the cost to them about adult vaccines. So we're in Benton Harbor, Michigan, as an example. And, you know, they're going through a water crisis very similar to Flint. So we are delivering water in Benton Harbor, Michigan, and talking to people about the COVID and other adult vaccines during those water deliveries. We're in Baltimore, Maryland. And in Baltimore, we're doing really creative stuff. And there's a target emphasis on pregnant and postpartum women, because women who are of childbearing age, I think, still are underrepresented in COVID vaccines and even in some of the other adult vaccines. So we're having real conversations with them, letting them know, hey, did you know that the vaccine won't cross the placenta? If you get the vaccine, you will not be giving your baby the vaccine.
Wait.
But if you get the vaccine and your body creates antibodies, you will be giving your baby COVID antibodies.
But stay right there.
Would you rather give your baby COVID antibodies or not the COVID virus?
But what I'm trying to tell you is that most of us don't even know that adults get vaccines. We think that ends in childhood. So I'm just trying to stop. Like, hold on, because many of us are stuck there. Plus, the definition of vaccine changed. Right? It was changed during COVID to really conform to what these shots do. That having been said, there is, I think that this is an education project, about what vaccines are, what they do, what they don't do. And just because piercing the bubble, letting adults know, Dr. Verholden, excuse me, that adults need them. I mean, I know I have friends who have shingles, after having had what is it, chicken pox as children. They don't know anything about vaccines, but for them, they just suffer. And you're saying, wait a minute, you really don't have to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shock. And I think we're trying to push up against a COVID weary culture. You know, we saw the Monmouth study last week that showed that 70% of Americans are over COVID. They don't want to talk about it anymore. So we're trying to pierce that bubble because what you've been trying to do, to your credit, is move the needle on increasing our health. You said, look, you can get all the shots in the world, you can get all the vaccines in the world, but if your baseline health is off, you're going to have big problems. You are going to have big problems. Let's bring Dr. Shanina Knighton in. Why is Dr. Shanina Knighton in these last 3.5 minutes? Why should she be part of this discussion before you bring her in, Dr. Verholden?
Well, it's not just, we've got many layers to help prevent the spread of this disease and to prevent the spread of other diseases. And this is her area of expertise. That is her work. How do you prevent the spread of infection, both as an individual, and what do you need to do there? And then how do we do that in formal settings, whether they be hospitals or schools or churches or community centers? And so I had never heard of infection prevention and the way she talked about it before I met her. And I'm very rarely blown away. And I said, if I'm blown away, I bet you others will be blown away too. So I've tried to get her voice everywhere I could get it because it's a valued, important voice. And it's the type of strategies that will support us not just during COVID, but in all things beyond COVID. So she's the bomb. I call her the bomb.edu. That's her.
We love it. I've got 3 minutes. What is your attraction to this program, and why do we need it, Dr. Knighton?
So good morning.
Good morning.
I would say it's echoing my mentor, Dr. Deb, everything that she has mentioned, just in regards to awareness, even bringing people up to speed about why their kids get stuff. Why should they be getting vaccines as adults? How is our landscape of evolution changing, right, in regards to how we eat, the animals being vaccinated? How is that impacting us, and why do we need vaccines to stay healthy, and why do we need to address our underlying health? But one of the things, too, like even within N-nights that we will address, it's just the fact that we tend to underplay our human experience, right? And so when we are telling people like, hey, go in and get vaccinated, whether that be for shingles, whether that be for COVID, pneumonia, or the other ones that do exist, you want to tell people about what about your lived experience. What does that experience look like for you? So that way they will be prepared mentally. Because we all know that the internet provides information. A lot of other information is provided in many different ways. People have their personal experiences with needles, and people may be scared. And so I think a lot of times when we tend to educate people about ways for us to dismantle that experience, help them to understand what they will be experiencing, that then takes away that fear factor. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't get vaccinated because they're fearful of the unknown. Mm-hmm. And so as a nurse, I know this. The first time somebody gets diabetes or have high blood pressure, it's scary when you're learning how to care for yourself in a different manner. And I think that we need to be more sensitive to the public in that regard, of really not just thinking about what we can do for them, but how can we help to undo those fears? And that's what the N-Nice program does. And I'm grateful the fact that you do have initiatives such as these that I'm hoping will become a standard of care and a standard of, just something that's mandatory or just there, across the board, because it's needed in order for us to get people more healthy.
Absolutely. The final minute, 60 seconds belongs to you, Dr. Deborah Verholden, because going forward, we will be talking about this N-Nice program specifically, because as we are COVID weary, we really do need to know that you shouldn't be health weary. Dr. Verholden.
Well, we got the N-Nice. We got the N-Nice coming to Chicago also through partnership with the Rainbow Push Coalition. And I'll just reiterate one thing that I really do like about this program is we've got so many great community organizations who are already out in the world fighting the good fight, doing the good work. This is about getting resources into their hands, helping to prop them up, helping to support their sustainability, to join the fight in supporting and promoting the health of our citizens. And I just can't get away from this issue of equity, because a lot of the things that we know are important, people don't have fair and equitable access to. You know, we know food is medicine. Food is probably the best medicine, the best thing you can do. If you did nothing else, somebody said people can do one thing for themselves starting right now that'll transform them in health. Doc, what would you want it to be? And I would have it be that people are all eating a high nutrient dense, healthy diet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what goes in your mouth is probably the biggest, you know, driver of your health, right? That's the intake. And
Absolutely.
then how much you burn is your outtake, right? And
Absolutely.
so if we could get people to put really good things in their bodies and fuel their bodies with really healthy things, that would be, you know, transformative. So I'll be giving more information specifically to people in the different areas where your listeners are about how they might be able to get involved, whether
You know what?
they want to benefit from the program or be a grantee for the program.
Well, you know, and maybe we can start working with some farmers who are having trouble getting their food from the field
This
to
is
the street.
Chicago's
Back in just a
Progressive
minute.
Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com.
Hey, you guys, you know, we're going to talk about Amir Locke. You know, the young man who was killed? Oh.
Yeah.
Shot in while he was asleep. At least trying to sleep.
I'm like, what is it about? What's going on in Minneapolis? Can I just, or Minnesota?
I know.
Like, geez.
But you do know that is, you know, the Mississippi River does begin there. Did you know that?
I did not.
Oh, look, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And it is one of the worst places for Black people to live in the United States. So this young man who was on his way, 22 years of age, he had positioned himself, he was moving to Dallas within days or weeks so he could be closer to his mom. And so he was sleeping on his cousin's sofa. And the no-knock warrant enabled them, and they were not even looking for him. That's the killer, literally. They were not looking for him. They just did not knock. They opened that door, boom, and that was it. And the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would eliminate no-knock warrants. They would effectively become illegal. That's why, you know, you need executive orders to get voting rights through, to get that sort of thing through. I mean, can you imagine just sitting at home and we're all vulnerable? And particularly folks who don't have keys, right? You know, they just dial in or whatever it is, your code, and they just go. That's what they did. Breonna Taylor, they did that to a woman who thankfully survived.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. It's like, what? You just roll up on me? What is that? And his parents are just, well, you know,
Yeah, that's a hard one to swallow right there.
Oh my gosh.
It is. Like one that honestly you just kind of, it's crazy because you speechless, right? Because you're still trying to figure out like why stuff like this even happens.
All right, 60 seconds. Sending Attorney Jones. There's Attorney C.K. Hoffler into voicemail. Try again in a few.
Okay. Well, we'll get right to it.
And sorry about getting a little trigger happy there with the spots.
Honey, don't worry about that. Things happen. Come on.
Press the wrong button. I'm like, oops.
It's all right. But I just have to pivot. Stay right there, Doctors Knighton and Verholden. Just stay right there. I just have to pivot real hard because this is one of the affiliates that I'm in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And also it's such a horrifying story. My father was really trying to get up there yesterday, but he had to do something else here. And then my brother's about to announce his run for Congress today. But there was a time when he would have been able to be in all these places at one time. Bless his heart. Ooh. So we have got quite a day. Oh boy.
10 seconds.
Okay, of course. Okay. Attorney Jones? Daryl?
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world. We
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
More and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Yes, we've inherited the mantle of Air America. For those of you who are still looking for Air America, that's what we used to be, but now we are WCPT and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And of course, I want you to meet my morning stars over on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and my official Facebook page, which is the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Everybody, please become my friend there too, as well as on Instagram, Santita Jackson IG, and Twitter at Santita J. So I've gotten all those things out the way and have to continue to give them to you. That's what I've been told. So everybody, let's talk about Amir Locke. My AM 950 radio family in particular up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, they are in mourning, but we all are. We all are. 22-year-old Amir Locke, can you imagine? What is going on, everybody? You're asleep on your sofa. You know, we fall asleep on your sofa. I know I've done that on mine. Or you're in your bed. And when you wake up, can you imagine someone breaking in, busting open your door? You'd be disoriented. And some people sleep with a gun because we are living in perilous times and on and on and on. But this 22-year-old young man, a child, really, young person, he was sleeping on his cousin's sofa when the Minneapolis police executed a no-knock warrant, burst through the door. They were not even looking for him, and they shot him and killed him. How does this work? And this is why we need executive orders on voting rights. That's right. What the Senate can't do, the president can do. Would it last only through his term? Sure. But it would take effect. What about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? Well, yeah, an executive order on this would work too, because then it would make it illegal for you to have a no-knock warrant. Everybody's vulnerable, everybody. So I want to hear your thoughts about this at 773-763-9278. 763-763-WCPT. This young man was set to move to Dallas. He wanted to be closer to his mother, wanted a nice fresh start down there. And attorney Darrell Jones, what are we looking at? How can something like this happen?
Well, good morning, Santita. It's always great to be with you. It's not great to be with you under the conditions of today with Amir Locke. What we see happening with the Amir Locke case, it's just really astounding. Because, as you've indicated, it's a 22-year-old guy that is sleeping not even in his own home, but in someone else's home, and not the subject of the warrant. And then you have police. And let's understand this. The Minneapolis police had been in a situation where there had been discouraged them from using no-knock warrants. So it wasn't banned in Minneapolis, but it had been discouraged following George Floyd and everything else that went on there. But what happens is that this Minneapolis Police Department, nonetheless, executes a no-knock warrant, meaning they don't knock on the door. They just, have a place that they identify. They bang it in. They go in with their guns blazing, yelling at the person, Amir, who's laying there asleep on his couch. And then, following that, of course, Amir is the back of the sofa where he is laying is kicked by one of the police officers to awaken him. He's wrapped in a blanket, and as he wakes up, he has his handgun. And, for whatever reason, he has a handgun, but we know that he lawfully has a handgun. We know that he was trained with a handgun. We know that he was lawfully trained with a handgun. We know that his family, who was law enforcement, trained him and talked to him about the handgun use. So he did everything properly. There's nothing that Amir Locke did that was improper. But the action of that Minneapolis Police Department and doing the no-knock warrant and getting excited and shooting him and killing him within seconds of seeing him is how we find ourselves in this position. There should have been a ban on the no-knock warrant. So the question becomes, as you've indicated a little earlier, Santita, what does voting rights have to do with this? Well, here's where the rubber meets the road. If we had the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act in place, if we had things like that in place, it would have prevented the no-knock warrants. Here's where voting rights meets the road. What happens is this. We don't simply elect presidents and members of Congress. We elect county executives and mayors who appoint police chiefs, who put in place policies. We elect judges who decide on the warrants that are put in place in cases like this. This is the importance of voting rights. This is the importance of exercising those rights to vote. This is why we push for that executive order, because it all flows down. And it's when it gets to the level of the everyday person. This is the everyday person level. This is the importance of voting rights, because once it reaches that everyday person level, you get it, you got it, you understand the importance of it. We saw that as well with the Ahmaud Arbery case, that once it got to the point of the everyday person, that you felt it, that you understood it. You understood why it was important to have prosecutors that were backing up the victims of color of crime and being certain that all cases were prosecuted. We're in a similar position here now with Amir Locke, with regards to being certain that, the mayor, Fry, is held accountable for the actions of his acting police chief and not instituting the no-knock across the board in this case. This is where we are, Santita.
Well, and I want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. How would you react if you heard someone break down your door? Number one, you don't know if they're the police or if they're robbers. So if you have access to a gun and if you are licensed to carry one and you've been trained, you'd go for that. Or you'd go for any measure that you could to try and defend yourself if someone is breaking down your door, particularly when you're asleep. For heaven's sake. Before we get Attorney C.K. Hoffler back up, let's go to Andre from Chicago. Andre, what's on your mind?
Hey, good morning, Santita. How you doing
It's
this morning?
great hearing your voice.
Likewise. Well, the way I see it is that this no-knock warrant is just as much a relic of the past as Jim Crow. You know how they used to go out there in the South and bust up in the door and drag them black guys out and hang them on a tree? It's a relic of the past. And while we're waiting on George Floyd and voting, there's something we can do in the meantime, and that's going to these governors of these different states, because you do have states' rights. You go to these governors and these congressmen of these different districts where they can do something immediately. I don't see the sense in having a no-knock warrant to begin with. If you want somebody that bad, you could stake them out. Go outside the house and just wait for them to come out. Why is it necessary to bust up in somebody's house in the middle of the night when they sleeping or they ain't got no clothes on just to execute a warrant? If you've been lying dormant all of that time, I don't see the state of urgency. So the whole thing need to be changed, but we need to deal with these governors in these states here and these mayors and tell them we want you to do a moratorium right away. ASAP on these no-knock warrants. Forget the police union. How are you going to have a police union that's more powerful than the mayor and the governor? That doesn't make sense to me. So I say, hey, that no-knock warrant is a relic of the past, is just as old as Jim Crow or part of Jim Crow, and it need to be abolished generally all the way around, every state.
I don't know in any place where that makes sense. Nicole Barrett said, with the reputation of law enforcement in Minneapolis, he knew to sleep with a weapon to protect himself. Absolutely. This is absolutely insane. Let me go to you, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Continue to call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. I hear and I see you callers coming in, but what do you think about Amir Locke? 22 years of age, sleeping on his cousin's sofa. Boom. The police come through the door, but he didn't know if it was the police. He didn't know if it was a robber. He didn't know who. He just knew that, then he didn't know because they shot him very quickly. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what is this?
Good morning. Good morning, Santita. This is another travesty. This is another devastating set of facts that never should have happened.
But wait, CK, this is happening all the time. Breonna Taylor.
All the time. And that's why, when Breonna Taylor was murdered, and people just sort of forgot about it. Just forgot about her. And that's why there was an effort to say, remember her name, call her name, yell her name. Because people just forgot about what happened. There was some excitement in the beginning, and that was it. Well, we can't forget about these things that are happening, because there are thousands of cases that are very similar that never get reported, that people never hear about throughout this country. And so this is just another example of a travesty. I feel so saddened again for yet another family that has to go through this. I feel sad for us as a country. I put the blame really at the need for those who are fighting and preventing policing reform, criminal justice reform that we desperately need. I'm not going to put it on one person. I'm not going to put it on the hands of the president, because I think there are so many other people that are culpable in this tragedy, and it keeps happening over and over. No-knock warrants are just simply, to me, not justifiable in most circumstances. They really aren't. They really aren't. Law enforcement, with the publicity over time that Breonna Taylor's murder got, law enforcement should have heightened sensitivity to the problem of no-knock warrants. There have been some local and states, local areas and municipalities that have gotten rid of no-knock warrants because they recognize the heightened scrutiny, they recognize the heightened probability that there could be error and it could be wrong, and they recognize the staggering statistics of people who are wrongfully killed because of no-knock warrants or excessive use of force because of what it takes to execute a no-knock warrant. So, Santita, we just have to, again, this is a reminder every single day, every minute, that we have to press this president for executive orders to address in the gap some of the problems with excessive use of force and the need for policing reform. And the reason for that is because we don't have the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act or anything like it at this time. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get it at some point, but we don't have it now. And one life lost due to no-knock warrants or any type of excessive use of force and proper inappropriate police conduct is one life too many. And it's got to stop. Secondly, on a local level, we just can't wait for the feds to come in and to try and help us, because even if there were a federal statute, we would still have to continue to push locally. You know, there's some federal laws that are on the books that states do not quite observe. So we have to really, really, really continue to push locally, state by state, city by city, county by county, to address this problem. But it certainly would make it much easier if there were a federal statute. And then finally, the people in our communities, we have to continue to meet with our organizations, with our churches, with our organizations like Rainbow, like, NAACP, like, Action Network, like Urban League, like all of our, and there are a lot of policing grassroots organizations that have sprung up and actually have always been in effect, but have focused on this issue. We need to continue to all meet and try to find a solution, push a solution.
Absolutely.
But let's hold the government's feet to the fire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me go to some of these callers. Chapearl, hey, you're on a little early today. Chapearl, what's on your mind?
Yes, Santita, I had to call in about this topic because yesterday, and this is me trying to strategize on what we can do and actually make change, because we know the problem. We know exactly what's happening in law enforcement. We know what's happening with voting rights. We know what we need to do. So the only thing that we have to do at this point is engage our community. And because we have so many young folks that are able to engage on social media, that is where collectively Rainbow Push, Transformative Justice, NAACP, NAN, all of these civil rights organizations have to join in on one social media campaign. So yesterday, I was sitting there watching, I was like, Holy Spirit, activate, activate. You seen that meme roll around. So yesterday, what I did was I was like, Black Twitter, activate. And I sent out a tweet for the POTUS, but I hashtagged it Black Twitter, because Black Twitter is very, very aggressive when it comes to different things like social media. If they can retweet ASAP Rocky and Rihanna 1 million times, they could retweet this tweet. And my tweet said to put President Biden, put an executive order on voting rights today. Very simple. And so we have to think strategically about how can we hit the masses of Black people. So when you think about Black Twitter, you think about Instagram, you think about Reels, you think about TikTok. This is where we need to go because this is where our people are. And so if we, what I know Daryl is on here, CK is on here. This is how you have to build a coalition because this is where the people are at. They're not on the street. They're not on the streets anymore. They are on their computers and their phones.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to reach people, not only these type of campaigns, but everybody has one type of campaign. Everybody's saying different things. If everybody is saying the same thing, it's gonna go viral. You get some of these, like Rihanna, you get Jay-Z, you get Beyonce, who have also been social activists, who have been out there. Get one of them to make a TikTok for you. Get Chance the Rapper to make a TikTok for you.
About
and
this.
It will go viral.
And about these specific issues.
About voting rights, about the George Floyd Policing Act. Get some of LeBron James will definitely do the George Floyd Policing Act for voting on TikTok. He will definitely do it. So this is how we have to meet the kids where they are. And they have millions of followers, Black, white, Latino, all of them. So this is how you have to target this campaign. Being behind your desk and trying to make phone calls and all that stuff, that's not where it's at anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We have to meet these young folks where they are. So I encourage everybody to do that hashtag Black Twitter Activate. Black Twitter Activate. They have millions of followers on Black Twitter. Okay. And we can get this done, and we can force him to do what he needs to do. We know that we are the backbone of the Democratic Party, and we have to prove it. And we have to make them do what they're supposed to do for us. I'm tired of talking. It's time for action. And that's my suggestion, y'all.
I hear you. Let me go to Pam. Pam from the West Side. No. Yes, before I go to Pam. Mm-hmm.
I was just saying, Chappelle makes an excellent point. But I think we have to do everything. There are some people that are not Twitter, Instagram friendly. They don't know what that is. They're not trying to get that way. But they can still do something. And so for those people who are not in the social media space, they can make calls. They can. A lot of people just do want to protest. They can do that. We have to do all of it. But what Chappelle is saying is it needs to be coordinated. But without a question, the White House, members of Congress, members of the U.S. Senate, they look at and participate in social media aggressively.
Mm-hmm. And everybody does. That's why, that determines who gets on television. That determines who gets a Spotify deal, if you will, or Amazon, whatever. Even though there are a lot of people who are off the grid, you make that point. There's a lot. Pam from the West Side. Pam, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita, and to the panel. I certainly agree with Chappelle, but also Black Twitter. Now, we don't have a social media company in this day and age that is Black owned that we can get a message out. That's just one question I'm putting out there. But also on Black Twitter or Twitter, we need the Oprah Winfrey. We need our Black billionaires to stop being in the background and to come forward and say something and tweet something. Her tweets also go viral. So we need our Black business community, Santita, from what I see, to step up a little bit more. Because I know what they did in the past, right, for Dr. King. I know what a John Johnson, Ed Gardner, and many, many others who put their money and their name to move forward, to advance, Black people forward. So we need those people to stand up. And as for law enforcement, here's where I am. No-knock warrants are problematic. But what about the people that execute them? I'm at the point, Santita, and I want your panel to please comment on this. Biden needs to put forth whatever executive orders. Yes, we need the grassroots effort on all levels. But here's where I am. There has been no concerted effort to identify the racist officers on this force or those who consistently abuse the pattern and practices of law enforcement. I want the same vetting for these officers that President Biden received when they removed those National Guardsmen off his detail because they looked up their social media profile and saw that they had affiliations with hate groups and supported hate groups. See, I want that kind of vetting, and then those officers need to be removed. And lastly, Santita, we need to have law enforcement and perhaps officers of the court to have to take polygraph tests. If it's good for FBI agents and Secret Service people, I think now we have to consider having, I don't care what level of law enforcement, you must take a polygraph test before, during, and after. It can be as random as drug tests at this point. Because we have to have some mechanism to help us identify these racists and remove them for the force. You cannot be a racist and be on the force. You probably shouldn't be sexist. I don't know how far we can take it, but for me, I want more serious vetting to remove those on the force, because it's the Warrens are the problem, but it's the racist and the inhumane people who execute them. And I don't feel like we talk about that enough. What are we going to do to get the officers removed from the force? Identify and remove them, Santita.
Well, you
And
know,
I'm
I
talking about
think that you're
now.
right. I think that you're right. I want to get some closing comments from attorneys.
Thank you.
Hoffler. Oh, no, thank you. Thank you. Because, I mean, you're letting us know that we're thinking out here. We're thinking out here. I've got a couple of, about really a couple of minutes before we have to go. 1 minute for you, Attorney Hoffler, and then 1 minute for you, Attorney Darrell Jones. What's the path forward? Amir Locke is gone, and Breonna Taylor, she's gone, and more people are gone or have been frightened to death while they've been resting in their homes, and the police break down the door. What is this, Attorney Hoffler?
Well, Amir Locke is gone, and there are probably 10 other Amir Locks who were executed, murdered around the same time. We have to look at and understand the travesty of what's happening, because if we don't recognize it, we won't feel there's a need for action. Now, what do we do next? The game plan. What is the game plan? Simultaneous execution of different things. People have to do something at their comfort level. If you can't call, because that's not what you do, if you're not on Twitter, because that's not what you do, you can certainly contribute to Transformative Justice Coalition, Rainbow Push, the NAACP, all of the organizations in your locality that are fighting against police brutality. You can contribute something. If you can't protest, because that's not at people's level, then you might be able to be part of groups, faith organizations that are in the community. Lend your voice to something, because we just have to do something, and it's got to be coordinated. And finally, recognize that this could be your child. This could be your nephew. This could be your godson.
Absolutely.
This could be anyone who's close to you. And we have to look in the mirror and recognize that. That would catapult us into action. Wake up every morning and say, there's something I can do.
And do it. Attorney Darrell
it.
Jones, 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Santita, and thank you, CK, for those words. You're absolutely right. One of the things that absolutely must be done that everyone can do is they can pick up and they call 202-456-1111, call the White House, tell them to pass an executive order dealing with voting rights. Santita, I also want to say this. February 26, 2012, it will be coming up on 10 years since the killing of Trayvon Martin. February 23rd, 2020, the killing of Ahmaud Arbery coming up. And now we add to that February the 2nd with the death of Amir Locke. I say all this to say we've got to start pushing forward here. We've got to know that we're making progress. It isn't indicated. It doesn't appear as though progress is being made. So we've got to really work forward hard to be certain that occurs. And I think that when we push forward on the voting rights front, when we push forward on all that CK has been indicating with regards to the actions that can be taken, we can start making progress. We need to be certain that we elect the judges, we elect the mayors, and we elect those in government that will best serve our interests. let's get out there. Let's support the young people that are out there pushing in the streets, because it was those young people that were out there that brought down and brought forward the talk of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, that brought down Confederate statues. We've got to get involved there, Santita. We've got to do it.
You got to do it. Call 202-456-1414, or if you want to leave a comment, 202-456-1111. But call the White House. Call your representatives and call your local officials. We need to get rid of these no-knock warrants, but we do need the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act to be signed into action by executive order. Can't wait on the Senate. What do you think Amir Locke would be saying right now? If it had been outlawed, he'd be able to say something. He'd be alive. It would be illegal. Wow. Let's talk about Brian Flores, the winning coach from the NFL's Miami Dolphins, who said, you know what? This league is racist. We're going to be talking with Jack Silverstein and a wonderful panel about the roots of the racism in the NFL. What about game fixing? Oh, boy. He gave us a lot. He gave us a lot to think about. A lot of people are debating it, and I want to know what your thoughts are. Call us at 773-763-9278. We'll be back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes.
We still have Chip Earl here too as well, Santita.
Oh, well, she comes on at 7:30.
Oh, well, she didn't go out of hold is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Would you like me to send her through, or should I just tell her we'll call her back later?
You can send her through, but I'll say hello to her.
Okay. And of course, we still got Attorney CK chill. I'm getting the other callers on right now.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to have to let them go so we can go on and go to this because we need to open up the lines.
Right.
You're trapped.
Hey, everybody. I hope you all will meet me at 11 o'clock. My brother's about to announce that he's running for Congress. That's right, on 112th and Western here in Chicago at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to be running off the air so I can go meet him over there. And exciting day. Monday, February 7th at 11 o'clock at 11204 Southwestern. So I will see you all there. Got a full day. Don't we all have full days though, huh? Boy. Okay, who's still there?
Attorney CK still here. Dr. Verholden's here. I just called Jack. I just got off the phone with Jack Silverstein. He said, can we call him back at 7:15? He's in the middle of getting his kids ready for school. I'm trying to get Jerry right now.
And it's actually Silverstein. I'm going to send you a number for Attorney Patillo. Okay. He just said he's available. And I know this is something I want to revisit on Friday, just before the Super Bowl. Okay, so okay. See this.
All right, sending Jerry Rouse through.
Jerry Riles?
Santita Jackson.
How are you? My first boss, was it? In radio? Bless your heart.
Santita, how are you?
How are you doing? It's wonderful hearing your voice. And I'm so glad that you are pursuing your passion here.
You have to continue to push forward, and I just appreciate the opportunity. How's things going with you?
Oh, things are great. Things are great. I've just had I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull my papers together. You know me, I still have a tranche of papers.
I love it.
Well,
I love it.
try to be prepared.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But things are good. My brother's going to run for Congress, and so he's going to announce that today at 11 o'clock. So I've got to run off the air because it's far south.
I heard about it, but he's making an official announcement today, huh?
He's going to make it official.
Okay. I saw your dad last week at the rally, but I didn't get a chance to chat with him.
I saw you on television
what
at the
was I
rally.
doing?
Well, they were just doing, it was B-roll. And you were talking to someone, and I think they were just trying to capture, what was happening at the rally.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I was channel surfing, so I was just going, I saw you with your hood on, trying to stay warm. Bless your heart.
Oh, yeah. I was out there covering it for CPT.
Yeah, that's what they told me you were going to be out there.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
It was good.
Fantastic.
Who's joining us on the panel?
Oh, Jack Silverstein. You know Jack from at Read Jack.
Yeah.
He's just such a tremendous historian. I think if we might be able to get Robert Patillo. He is hosts a radio show in.
Sending Attorney Patillo through.
Okay, in Atlanta, but he's also the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. Attorney Patillo, I'm glad I caught your text. I typically catch them.
I just saw this morning when I woke up.
Well, no worries. When I'm in the middle of the show, I don't typically catch it, so I'm glad I did. And I've got Jerry Riles, who is a veteran of radio here, and who is really, I'm not going to say a sports fanatic. He is, one of our top sports analysts, really. And we're going to have Jack Silverstein from at Read Jack, tremendous journalist, who wrote an extensive piece on how blacks were excluded from the NFL for 12 years after having started in the league.
10 seconds.
So.
Santita, am I still on for the segment?
Well, I mean, if you want to be, but we're going pivoting right into football. You're right there.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Santita Jackson Show, WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, inherited the mantle of Air America, and now we are WCPT, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. My stations, and we are growing every day. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, please like and share as we talk about racism in the NFL. And my official Facebook page, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Please go there. Twitter at Santita J and Santita Jackson IG. Well, let's talk about racism in the NFL. Let's talk about the NFL's depression era ban on black players. They started the league with black players, and then in the Depression, George Halas, yes, and the fathers of the league, if you will, decided to remove blacks from the league. Jack Silverstein is going to be talking to us about that and about these charges that Brian Flores, the former coach of the Miami Dolphins, what did he charge, and why are these charges so explosive? Game fixing, sham interviews, the Rooney Rule, which was not even being observed. Were you supposed to really recruit black people for these positions in a league that is 70% black? So, everyone, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Let me know what you think. Hey, everybody. Today, I'm going to be meeting, yes, my brother Jonathan Jackson is going to be announcing his bid for the first congressional seat. And so I'm going to be there at 11 o'clock today. Hope you'll meet me at 112th and Western 112th and Western today at 11 o'clock. Hope to see you there. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 26 degrees. It will be partly cloudy, but it's fully cloudy right now as I'm looking out the window. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 21 degrees, partly cloudy. In the NBA, because of course we're waiting for the Super Bowl on Sunday. The Timberwolves were triumphant over the Pistons, 118 to 105, but the Bulls fell to the 76ers. The 76ers 119, the Bulls 108. Protests in Canada against COVID-19 restrictions are growing, everybody, growing beyond Ottawa and lining up on the United States border. The mayor of Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada, declared a state of emergency yesterday following 2 weeks of protests that are growing, initiated by a group of truckers who began blocking traffic on January 29th. Other protests sprouted over the weekend. Vancouver, Winnipeg, Toronto, Quebec City, at least 7 arrests were made. We will be following that because it is growing and it's growing beyond the truckers. Mark Short, the former chief of staff to Mike Pence, the former vice president, chose to rebuke former President Donald Trump last week because his comments about Pence's ability to overturn the 2020 election merited response. Vice President Pence, former Vice President Pence, called out his former boss by name on Friday, everybody, saying that, quote, President Trump is wrong, close quote, and claiming that the then vice president had the right to overturn the election on January 6th. 2021. Democratic Senator Joe Manchin and Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski are signaling optimism about their work to reform the Electoral Count Act, with Manchin going so far as to say that it will, quote, absolutely, close quote, pass. The act specifically makes changes to a 19th century law that was intended to give Congress a process to certify the Electoral College votes submitted by the states. Election law experts and those urging reform have repeatedly warned that in light of the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th of 2021, the law needs to be updated and strengthened to ensure that a losing party can never subvert the results of the Electoral College. And those are some of the headlines today on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's get right to it. What do you think about the NFL? What do you think about Brian Flores and his explosive accusations that come on? America is what was said, racism is as American as apple pie, something that we deal with. But somehow or another, we always feel, or certainly we want to believe, that sport is where the playing field is even. That is to say, the best players get on the field, they don't. That politics is not involved in selecting members of a team. That's not true. And that racism is not a factor in hiring coaches. Absolutely untrue. Remember Joe Gilliam back in the 70s? Oh boy. He was one of these pioneering quarterbacks along with James Harris and others. And it was so hard for blacks to become quarterbacks. I remember him coming by my father's office at Rainbow Push because he desperately needed help. He was a brilliant quarterback, came out of an HBCU, and could not, he was drafted as a quarterback. That was his expertise. And he met so much resistance. And you can get injured, if you will, on the football fields. And those are just the players. But now we're talking about coaches. And coaches do much more than call plays. They actually shape the culture of a team. They shape the culture of these young people who come into the league. They become father figures in many respects. Why can't black men do that for the 70% of the players who are black in the league? Brian Flores, compared this to, really likened it to a slave system. So I want to talk with some people who are absolutely brilliant and who really understand why these charges were so explosive and where we go from here. We're going to be having Jack Silverstein on very shortly. And Jack Silverstein is a Chicago sports historian. He wrote an explosive article just in 2019 in which he reminded us of the NFL's Depression-era ban on black players. For 12 years, the NFL excluded black players from playing in the league. Cannot wait to talk with him about that. And of course, we are going to have We're going to have attorney Robert Patillo, who raised this issue on his show on WAOK in Atlanta yesterday, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. Let me start off with Jerry Riles, my first boss in radio, executive producer and host of The Rewind. That's right. It's on the Roku channel, and he is just a brilliant, he was a great boss, a great manager of the station, a great program director, but his love has always been sports, and he's a brilliant sports analyst. Jerry Riles, what are we looking at? Why has the world of sport, the NFL in particular, been so rocked by what Brian Flores has charged?
Well, first of all, Santita, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. And it's always an honor and a privilege to get an opportunity to sit down with the great Santita Jackson. Thank you so much for the
Jerry
kind
Riles.
Hey, Santita, it's interesting. The reason it's rocked the NFL world is the fact that this is an African American gentleman with a pretty respected resume that is publicly speaking out saying this has been going on for too long and it's wrong. And I need to stand up and speak out on this, because it's not necessarily about me getting the head coaching position for the Miami Dolphins. But he said he looked at his young kids, 6 and 7-year-old sons and a 5-year-old daughter, and he said that pushed him to the limit, because he did not want his kids to grow up in an environment, in a society, in a culture like this. And in order for him to prevent that, or hopefully prevent that from happening, he had to take a stand, and he had to speak up and speak out, even if it sacrificed his position as being a head coach in the National Football League. And I think it's unprecedented when you hear a head coach speak out against the 32 owners. And I think that's part of the reason why this has rocked the National Football League.
Robert Patillo, your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because I've spoken to some African-American assistant coaches, both who are currently in the league and formerly in the league. And my understanding is that the league has been reaching out to many of them, many people who have either been passed over or wronged, and seeking to ensure their silence, to make sure they don't join in the Flores lawsuit. And now we've seen some assistant coaches and some former players kind of going out of their way in the last few days to say that the league is not racist. We had Tiki Barber on a radio interview literally crying, the former New York Giants players, claiming that the owners of the New York Giants aren't racist. So I think that because they're putting this full court press on to prevent Brian Flores from reaching class certification, to try to silence as many former players and coaches as possible, it's very also interesting that as soon as this Flores lawsuit was filed, we saw across the league just a rash of black assistants being hired. We saw Terrell Austin being elevated to defensive coordinator in Pittsburgh. We saw San Francisco making Anthony Lynn associate head coach on the team. We saw Mike McDaniels, the San Francisco offensive coordinator who's biracial, being hired as the Miami Dolphins' new head coach yesterday. So this suit is already making a difference. And I think that what the NFL fears most is that Flores will get class certification, so getting 5 other individuals at least to have similar claims to join in, that he will be able to survive a motion to dismiss, meaning that the case will proceed to discovery and trial. And once you get to discovery, well, now all bets are off in the case. That means all internal emails from the NFL are open, all text messages, notes from the owners' meeting, anything that people can get their hands on, depositions of owners, GMs, player personnel, so on and so forth. And if you get all the NFL's dirty laundry out there like that, you really start to threaten the antitrust exemption that the NFL holds. You start threatening the nonprofit status of the NFL as a private association. And frankly, you start to bring into question the continued existence of the league. So the league is taking this very seriously, understanding that this suit, if taken far enough, could be an existential threat to the continued existence of the NFL. And this is why we're seeing this full court press to discredit people like Brian Flores, to discredit people like Hugh Jackson, and to silence anyone else who might have a claim against the league. So they're taking it seriously, thus we should take it seriously also.
Tiki Barber was crying, my goodness, on the air. Well, that's interesting. Let me welcome to the show, and we still have attorney C.K. Hoffler, because I certainly want to know the legal implications of this. But let me go to you, Jack Silverstein, Chicago sports historian at Read Jack, at READ Jack. He wrote what, for me, and certainly for my father, who played, was recruited at a Big Ten school, the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, to play there in 1959, 1,000 years ago. But they were desegregating that at that time, and the Big Ten and all of these big schools. And he said it was a horrible experience that he had there, horrible experience. And he went running to North Carolina A&T, which of course changed his whole life, but he had a horrible experience because he was also a quarterback. Ouch. Jack, I mean, I love the article that you gave us in 2019. Of course, I had you on Reverend Jackson's nationally syndicated show about the NFL's Depression era ban on black players. So when you hear, given that, that the NFL started with black players and they excluded them for 12 years, when you see Brian Flores, what are you seeing? I mean, do you see him disconnected from history or part of it?
Oh, anyone who read, well, first of all, good morning, Santita. Thank you for having me. I didn't catch the attorney's name who was on just before me, and I think it's still on, but your information is so needed and so fascinating, and thank you for sharing. Anyone who read Brian Flores' lawsuit, it's a 58-page suit, which maybe if you haven't read a lawsuit sounds a little longer than it is. There are images. It kind of reads sometimes straight down the middle. So I encourage everyone to read it. When you read his lawsuit, you know definitively he is not at all disconnected from history. It's the exact opposite. The lawsuit essentially is two parts. The first part, and I don't mean sequentially, but I mean you can divide it into two parts. The first part is all the new information about Brian Flores' particular situation with the Dolphins, with the Giants, with the Broncos. And so that's a lot of information that we didn't know, obviously, before the suit. But then the second part is a comprehensive history of the NFL's racism and racist structures from 1920 all the way to the present. And what the suit does an incredible job of is laying out that history in a way that one by one, year by year, decade by decade, connects the past to the present. There are statistics on black coaches, coordinators, executives in the league right now. And there is a full section that's called, I think, Racism in the Present Day, or something to that effect. And it talks about Colin Kaepernick. It talks about the concussion settlement. It talks about the John Gruden emails. It talks about the broader national anthem protests. It talks about the words on the field and on the helmets that we've all seen. It takes all of us and stop racism or whatever silly slogans they have on there. And it does that in the context of this 102-year history. So it marches all the way through from 1920 to the present. Brian Flores and his attorney, and whoever's involved in writing the suit, they are purposefully and painstakingly connecting his situation to the NFL's past. And he's also doing it not just for himself, but he identifies other coaches who have been through something similar in terms of racial discrimination in hiring in the NFL. So he puts the numbers on it, he puts the stories on it, the anecdotes, the faces, literally the faces, because he's got a couple of pages that are just the little headshots of each NFL coach and each NFL GM, and that obviously paints a picture when you see all the faces lined up. So, no, he has put himself squarely within the context of history and is putting himself squarely into an argument of, this is not just about me, I'm the one speaking up right now, but this is about a 102-year history during which time the NFL has had 21 black head coaches, not counting coaches who were only interim or late season replacements. So only 21 head coaches of color have been, Tom Flores. So only 21 black head coaches have been in the NFL over 102 years. All the numbers are damning.
What is, connect this to, let's go back to the Depression. Or to the founding of the league and when black people were thrown out of the league. What happened there? Why were blacks thrown out of the league having started the league?
So there are two eras actually in pre-ban run. So the NFL was founded in 1920. The ban on black players began in 1934. You can split that time in two. There was 1920 to 1926, I believe, which saw a higher number of black players, including Chicago's Fritz Pollard, including later of Chicago, Judge and Hall of Famer Duke Slater, and a number of other All-Pros. And the split came when the NFL was facing a lot of financial troubles, still weren't quite as popular as college football, and they were able to get rid of a number of smaller market teams who they felt weren't pulling their weight financially with the bigger market teams being Chicago, the Bears, the Giants. The Packers had that great following, so they weren't a big market team, but they were kind of treated as such. And when that happened, the number of black players dropped off dramatically, dropped off down to just Duke Slater. And historians believe that the reason for that is that these bigger market teams who were making more money had less of a need to bring in black players to compete. Then we get to 1933, and we were down to just two black players, Joe Lillard of the Chicago Cardinals and Ray Kemp of the new franchise in Pittsburgh. And there was a significant rules meeting among the owners, and the NFL had a number of problems after the 1932 season. The Bears won the championship and still lost money. So they made a bunch of rule changes to improve the quality of the game. This is the first time that they set up divisions, which created one playoff. The divisions also were done geographically so that the teams didn't have to travel as much. You were playing teams that were closer to you. Obviously, that's a huge money saver. They did other things with the hash marks. So in the past, as the ball went out of bounds on the sideline, you ended up scrunched on the sideline. This is the first time that they said if it goes out of bounds that you're going to have the ball in from the sideline. So all these really great rules that change pro football and change the quality of the game. But one of the other things that certainly happened in this meeting was that the owner of the Washington team, then the Boston team, George Preston Marshall, who was new to the league but was respected as a great promoter of amateur sports, professional sports, and also ran a dry cleaning business to some acclaim. He led the push to ban black players on the basis that this is the Depression. White fans don't want to see black players taking jobs that could be filled by white players. The story that I wrote about was to re-examine this and to acknowledge that while the NFL has always placed George Preston Marshall at the center, and they make him the actor of this ban because he was racist even for the 1930s. But you had all of these power players, George Halas being among them, and people in the Mara family, the Rooney family, David Jones, who owned the Cardinals, but then who quickly sold to the Bidwell family, and Bert Bell, Curly Lambeau. If you're at all familiar with the NFL, you've heard these names: Lambeau Field, You've got Bert Bell, who's a longtime commissioner. He was the owner of the Eagles, and you've got a Bert Bell trophy. It's an MVP trophy. The Bears, Cardinals, the Washington team, not the Washington team, the Bears, Cardinals, and the Giants and the Steelers are all owned today by the same families that owned them during the ban. So there's this connection all the way through. And what I wrote about was acknowledging that, yes, George Preston Marshall probably led this. He probably pitched it. I have no trouble believing that. But he would not have been alone. He wouldn't have been able to do this on his own. He's only in his second year as owner. And all of the other rules, all those rule changes that I told you about were done by George Preston Marshall and George Halas, who is the head of the Rules Committee. So my article was looking and saying, we reviewed George Halas in the city of Chicago, in the state of Illinois. He is one of the most famous figures of our state in our lifetime. And obviously one of the most revered and respected. He's got, there's two statues at Soldier Field. It's Walter Payton and it's George Halas. And so my article said,
I've got 20 seconds.
Everything we know about George Halas says that he is always in charge. Nothing happened in the NFL without his say-so. So this could not have happened without his say-so either. And it's a way of looking again at this period and at George Halas and at the present-day NFL.
Yeah, and he bought Gail Sayers' house. How generous. It was a restricted neighborhood. I know he was our neighbor. We moved in like 3 years later. Unbelievable. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show, talking about the NFL and racism in it. What about Brian Flores and these explosive charges? Are they really that explosive, or is he just a brave guy? Back in just a minute.
Sending Dr. Joseph Bryant through.
Okay. CK, you there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay.
I'm going to have to run soon, but I'm still here. I'm sorry, I misread your text. I thought I was on
No. If you could give me a legal something, because you file these, you deal with these kind of lawsuits all the time. You just give me a couple of minutes on it. That would be like a really important piece, because this is legal. This is a lawsuit, and I'm just wondering what the Robert, you too, what the fallout could be legally. I mean, when you think about, because I have several friends whose fathers played professional football in the 60s and the 70s, and they're suing now for health reasons. And then you see how the black players were treated. I mean, there's just the implications of what and the implications are stunning. I mean, and Jack, the fact that he, you made me go to the lawsuit itself. And I said, whoa, he, as they said, he brought receipts. He's very, very, very specific. He's very specific.
And Santita, a class action, because I do class action work, a class action lawsuit must be very specific. It must be. So do
you think that was part of his planning? He's thinking.
Oh yes, yeah, okay. Yeah, because it is very. In the class action business, it's tough to get a class certified and all that kind of stuff. But, you have lawyers that do nothing but that. But you have to plead with specificity, because what you're doing is, and if others join, you're saying you're bringing this case on behalf of a class. So more than likely, they are right now recruiting 3 or 4, it doesn't take a whole lot, 3 or 4 other members, or 3 or 4 other people, former players or coaches, who, it'd be great if you had a former coach. There aren't that many who also was a player.
It would have to be. Wouldn't it have to be coaches for these specific claims?
It would have to be coaches, but it would be great if you had
back in '60
who was a former player. That would be absolutely phenomenal.
And I'm not getting an answer from Chaparral Santita.
Oh, okay. We'll try it again.
The players into this.
What I'll add to that is that the lawsuit notes that they believe they have it says there's language that they believe they have a class of 40 potential people who I guess would qualify for the class. So when you say they're looking for 3 or 4 based on the suit, it reads to me, not an attorney, but it reads to me as if they've identified well beyond the 4 or 5 that they would need.
They need 3 or 4 to serve as class representatives. So there's a big distinction. When you bring a class action
of 40.
Right. It can't be one person bringing it. You got to have other class representatives.
All right, Chaparral's here, and we come back in 10, everyone.
Okay.
40.
Okay, stand by, everybody. If you can give that to me in about 90 seconds, CK, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. We're talking about racism in the NFL. I want you to continue to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Have my first boss in all of radio, brilliant sports analyst, Jerry Riles. We encourage you to go. He is the executive producer and host of the Rewind Sports 60, everybody. It's on the Roku channel, and you need to see it. He is really brilliant. So many insights. We've been talking with Jack Silverstein at Read Jack. You need to read this tremendous piece that he wrote in 2019 on the NFL's Depression era ban on black players. But if you want some great sports analysis, indeed, Chicago sports, there's no one better. And of course, Robert Patillo, brilliant civil rights lawyer, of course, he and CK host shows on WAOK. She every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. He every Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on WAOK, that iconic station in Atlanta. And I'm going to be coming back to you, Robert, and to you, CK, but we're joined by Reverend Dr. Joseph Bryant, who is head of the Silicon Valley Project of the Rainbow Push and the Sports Project out in California. So we got him up real early this morning. Before we get to you, Pastor Bryant, let me bring up Chaparral, who's going to get me my greens and my string beans and my cornbread and my ham hocks today. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
Yes, Santita, you know they are all ready for you and ready to go. And I just want to let everyone know that Celebrations by Us is still catering. We're actually taking a lot of Super Bowl orders for hot wings, barbecue wings, sweet and sour wings, sliders, as well as also chicken wraps.
Meatballs.
So give us a call at 7. Oh, yes, let's not forget the meatballs. We have like 5 different kinds. So give us a call at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. And Celebrations by Us is also partnering with the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation. This year we're having our first annual charity ball. It's going to be on March 5th. 2022. And so give us a call at 708-526-4546. Even if you cannot come to the charity ball, sponsor a mother who has lost a child, and you can get your tickets on Eventbrite. And the key word is the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation.
And Courtney Copeland is...
Courtney Copeland is my son. He was killed March 4th, 2016 by an unknown assailant. But what we do know is that in the presence of 10 to 15 Chicago Police Department cops, they did not do anything to save his life. So these are the things that we know. You can catch our podcast, which is called Somebody, on anywhere where you can get podcasts.
Of course, and it first appeared on The Intercept. They almost have 2 million downloads. Go on and add to it. She'll be speaking at the South by Southwest Festival very, very, very soon, and so we're so excited. Thank you so much, Pearl. You know what, everybody? I hope that you will go to Celebrations by Us, and I hope you will call her at 708-526-4546 so that you can be supportive of this ball. She does a lot of great work throughout the year. And she wants to comfort people as God has comforted her. Thank you so much, Pearl. We just love you and appreciate all that you do. Can't wait to get my food this afternoon. Okay, there we go. I had to say it. But you know what? Joining this magnificent panel, before you go, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, before I bring on Pastor Joseph Bryant, the question you had, we were talking during the break with Jack Silverstein about... just about the lawsuit, about a class action lawsuit that looks like Brian Flores is just methodically he's on track to file one. Yes?
No, absolutely. Now, and let me just say this, Santita, this is a well-conceived, well-executed lawsuit. This is not, which if you file, and I do have, as you know, I've been involved in tobacco class action litigation, as well as I'm currently involved in opioid class action litigation, and I've actually been involved also, and I have a case against Amazon, which is a class action lawsuit in the Southern District, like this, against Amazon on behalf of Chris Smalls, who brought a case on his behalf as well as on behalf of others similarly situated. And so when you look at class actions, there are a few things that you have to bear in mind. One, they're very difficult cases. It's difficult to get a class certified because you're not just saying, yeah, I've personally been harmed, but I'm doing this on behalf of so many others. But before you shoot that bullet, you have to have spoken to others. You have to know who you might be able to line up and who you may not be able to line up. And also, of course, when you file a lawsuit, you do have time to get class members, other class members, if it's that type of class action, which I think this is. It doesn't matter how large or small. I've been involved in a class action that had 1 million, Santita, 1 million participants against Quickstar many years ago. And I've been involved in a discrimination class action lawsuit that had 4,800 African Americans, Latinos against the state of New York. So there are different types of class actions, different classes. This is a very small group because there haven't been that many African American coaches or people who sat in the position that Brian Flores sat in. So others similarly situated. I personally believe that what would be so compelling would be if you had some of these former coaches who also were players, because a lot of times you do have them that were players, because they would have an additional insight that's very important. I believe the key to success to this case is not just the legal ramifications, because when you do a class action, there are very significant legal ramifications, very significant legal hurdles you have to jump. And that's what the lawyers are there to do. And you get people who do this for a living and are technicians. But it's a political aspect. The players at some point are going to have to take a position on this issue. And I hope they do. So if you've got a class representative who is a coach, who also happen to be a player who can give that additional insight, what is it like when you are a Black player, when you don't see yourself in anyone coaching? That is so critical. That's the irony of this. 70% of the players are African American, and yet we can't get more than one here and one there in terms of the head coaching position and GMs. That makes no sense. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a case that's going to have traction, that has traction. This is a case that's going to go somewhere. This is a case that the NFL could have avoided, because when you get to this point, all negotiations have fallen. For sure, Brian Flores reached out to them and tried to resolve this. And by the way, this is a case that has criminal ramifications. When you're talking about fixing, throwing a game and all that, that has criminal ramifications. Sure. And those are part of the allegations. So this is very serious. I'm sure the NFL wishes they had engaged in serious discussions with him and others before this.
Well, you know, they can't wish them away.
Shame on them.
They give shame on them. And you know, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, they can't wish it away. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. We've got Reverend Dr. Joseph Bryant from Rainbow Push. Reverend Dr. Bryant, I know the NFL wishes that they could wish this away, but they can't. Why do you think they could wish this away? Why? They know what they've been doing.
Good to have this. Yes, they do. They do. Good to have this time with you, as well as these fantastic esteemed guests on the broadcast this morning. You know, the NFL has had a track record of struggle in this area. It goes back to, I heard earlier, discussions around George Halas and some of the issues about the lockout periods and different things that evolved over the years. And really, the NFL has failed to get out of its own way when it comes to being proactive and positive in their diversity, inclusion, and opportunity presentation of their league. And what has happened is, over time, there continues to just be more and more ways for them to sidestep their quote responsibility in this regard. One of the things that they consistently do is that as a league, they try to do their diversity messaging with the messages on the back of the helmets and end zones and things of that nature, which is fine in and of itself. But without the strength of the powers that be and the voices of authority, then a real diversity and inclusion cannot happen. And so even with the slogans and those types of things that they are comfortable now having on the helmets and in the end zones of the games, what really has to happen is that there have to be more minorities at the table of decisions. And so what the challenge is that ownership, we're talking about an ownership base of white men who don't even have it oftentimes on their radar that they are not being as inclusive as necessary or as even positive for the NFL, because these African-American coaches are not just bums and guys off the street. These are qualified, high quality, the Jim Caldwells, the Tony Dungy's, the Leslie Spragers. These are men who have proven themselves over the years to be qualified, had winning records, won Super Bowls. And so what the NFL does as a league is try to sideswipe their responsibility by putting it back on the owners. And the owners, unfortunately, are not taking the Rooney Rule seriously. They don't apply it with authenticity, as we saw even in the text messages exchange that Brian Flores was able to, share with the public that, there was obviously a position already filled, even though he was on his way to an interview for the position. There was already a white man who had been chosen for the position. And so the NFL has a responsibility to lean into the owners, and that's always been an awkward place for the NFL because technically Roger Goodell and the NFL office, they work for the owners. And so that relationship has always been very challenging for them. But again, if you're going to run a league that generates $12 billion a year, has 70% African-American workforce, then there's got to be a more aggressive approach to inclusion, even among these billionaire owners who obviously aren't taking the Rooney Rule seriously.
Oh, please, they're just having fun. And they're having fun with each other. And that's what's so awful about all of this. They're just having fun with each other, and these men on the field are little pieces on a chessboard. And that's what's so awful about this. Yeah, but you go to the games, there's a difference between the rank and file where the fans sit and then the owners' boxes and the corporate boxes. It's a whole cycle. You see it. You see, and the commissioners of these leagues, baseball, footballs, any football, whether it's soccer or American football, they run nothing. The owners run something. They hired this person to manage and take this headache away from me. Let me get a few of these calls in. Mark from Irving Park. Mark, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Santita. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I'm pretty much, burned out on the NFL. A lot of this, nothing comes as a surprise to any of us that kind of noticed how things play out here. But one of the things that happened a few years ago that caught my attention, and I'd love to hear what the panel has to say about it, is they were pushing this rule change supposedly to protect the quarterback. And it really changed the game. It really protected the less mobile, kind of the quarterback, as they kind of mostly are these days. And it really restricted and tied the hands of, the very athletic guys that would usually get to the quarterback. Your mostly athletic black, stud that was out there. And I sometimes wonder if that rule had some sort of ulterior motive to keep a certain kind of player and keep a certain type of profile on the field. And I was just curious if that is far-fetched or, given the history of these people, that is something.
No, we'll go down the line, starting with you, Jerry Wiles. What do you think?
It's interesting, Santita. There's so much going on, but when you look at the ownership, or the owners in the National Football League, 32 owners, they pay Roger Goodell to be their mouthpiece. And the Rooney Rule, it is a sham. You're talking about this rule being put into place in 2002, and in 2022, we're talking about this. It's definitely a sham. And the only reason Mike Tomlin, the only African-American head coach in the National Football League currently today, is the head coach, is the fact that he is playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, or he's coaching for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Rooney family, who implemented the Rooney Rule. So it's an embarrassment, and it is definitely a sham. And Brian Flores, it's bravery and courageous for him to step out like this. Unfortunately, I don't see much
happening because the National Football League is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And these guys collaborate, they get together, and as mentioned earlier in the conversation, you know, you throw a couple assistant head coaches here for this franchise and put a couple of minority coaches in place visibly so the public can see, and then they think that, okay, everything is fine. The Bears here in Chicago has done exactly that. If the Bears really wanted to make a major impact to show diversity and show that they're not, as they've been accused of being a racist franchise, they would have hired not only an African-American general manager, they would have hired an African-American head coach, and many of them were out there, the candidates, and they would have had a starting African-American quarterback leading their franchise. But unfortunately, the Bears didn't feel the need that they had to do that. And it would have been interesting to see, had Flores come out with these accusations or this lawsuit prior to the Bears making their hire, if they for sure would have gone for an African-American head coach. Leslie Frazier, who played with the Storybook franchise in the Super Bowl team, is with the Buffalo Bills as a defensive coordinator. He would have been a prime candidate to return back here to coach the Chicago Bears as a head coach. But the Bears never entertained that. And one last thing I wanted to mention is that if you look back in the late 90s, the great late Walter Payton made a pitch for ownership, I believe, of the St. Louis Rams back in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. And Walter Payton, what he means to the league, was turned down. He was denied. He had financial backing. He had everything in place, but he was not voted in to be owner of a National Football League team. So right then and there, if they turned down Walter Payton, you know.
No, Jerry, they wouldn't let him run in the ball at the Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? I'm still salty with the. I don't care what happens with them, with all due respect.
But listen to this. This is one thing that I want to put out there, Santita, is that the Bears, I believe, and I've been saying this for at least a year, maybe 2 years now, I believe the Chicago Bears owe the Payton family, Eddie Payton, his brother, Connie Payton, his wife, Jared Payton, and Brittany Payton, they at least need to honor what Walter Payton means to the city, to the franchise, and to the league, and offer them a measly 1% ownership of the Chicago Bears franchise. A measly 1%.
No,
go
for it. No. This man carried that sorry team on his back, and I can say that as a Chicago. When I grew up here, they were a sorry team.
Sure.
And they got to the Super Bowl. We were shocked, and Mike Ditka would not even let him run the ball in for the touchdown. Now I'm done with that.
They need to offer. They need to offer them.
They not just 1%. They need to give them a significant chunk of the team, and then be about the business of building a real team and stop playing. Stop playing these folks who can't even run around a block. I'm tired of that. Let me get some. We're moving on. Closing thoughts. Don't get me started on these Bears. I mean, Jack, I'm going to get to you last. I mean, Reverend Dr. Bryant. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. They don't mind you playing on the field, and they do it in all of these sports, but they do not want us in the C-suites.
Well, I've got to say a couple of things. But first of all, in terms of your Bears, I will give them just a half a hand clap for the hiring of Ryan Poles as their new GM. So they do have an African-American general manager. We hope that is the first step to being more inclusive all the way around.
Good for them. I'm glad they've begun, and we're going to give them that.
Absolutely. And we'll give them a half a hand clap for that.
No, I'll give them a full hand clap for that. But we're talking about this history, right? I mean, this history is shameful.
The concept is so bad. It's so bad that, it's unfortunate because, a city like Chicago and a team like the Bears in their history, there should have been more progress that they could have made, especially with a city that has been such a predominant and progressive area of positivity for the African-American community at large, with your family and as well as others that make such an impact in that city and has made a national and global impact. So Chicago always needs to be at the forefront of change when it talks dealing with diversity and inclusion. And I think it's important that this step is a good step for the Bears, but I think every team needs to start really stepping up. I mean, the Rooney Rule, I know it's been mentioned, is not being implemented in the manner it should be. Even the rules that they should be following in terms of what the interview process should look like, they aren't following that. Clubs are supposed to have not only diverse candidates, but they're supposed to have candidates from the career development program. That is a part of the NFL development for African-American candidates in the pipeline. That's not happening consistently. And I've got to say that in the flip side of sports leagues, the NBA this past year had 13 African-American coaches going into the NBA season. And so even though institutionally, we know the leagues continue to struggle with having more and more inclusion across the board, the NBA, and Adam Silver deserves a lot of credit for that because he continuously tries to make sure that diversity and inclusion isn't something they just talk about. They actually are trying to be about. They had 13 black coaches on the bench, head coaches, to start the this current NBA season never end. So the fact that the NBA has been able to do it, part of it is because, and I think Attorney Hoffman made a great point. Part of the reason why the NBA has been able to make that kind of progress is because the NBA listens to its players. It's LeBron James, it's Chris Paul, it's Carmelo Anthony. It's these guys who have used their voices, and the NBA listens. The NFL players need to do the same thing and begin to utilize their platform in a greater way. We've seen it work in the NBA, and we definitely need to encourage our NFL players to do the same thing.
And the NBA is also a global league, so they know that they cannot take this whiteness to 95% of the world. It's just not going to work. Most of the world doesn't even look like this. So they need.
And the NBA is very, very, very progressive in that regard, and the NFL has just been stuck.
And they're making good business sense because we're only 4.5% of the world. Most of the world does not look like this, and this is crazy. Let me get 2 minutes from the rest of my panel. Starting with you, Jack Silverstein, I want you to come back and go through this history more thoroughly because I think that we really need. It feels like we're stuck in it's like we've gone back to the Depression era, or we never left, Jack.
Yeah, so I think these points made about what the Bears have done and what the Bears can do, and ownership to the Payton family. My goodness, I'm for that. I think these are really interesting because I think what we have in Chicago and George McCaskey is a really fascinating test case. What the NFL needs, or maybe they don't feel they need it. What we would like to see the NFL have, I think, needs a Brian Flores of owners. It needs someone who is going to come out and say, yes, I've had these kinds of conversations with other owners about hiring. So I want to tell you a little bit about George McCaskey. He seems to be on a personal journey to move the Bears in a better direction. And it seems to have started in April of 2017 when then Bears linebacker Sam Acho took George McCaskey on a couple of different trips. They went on a police ride-along in Chicago. They visited a penitentiary in Louisiana. Now, I personally don't believe that black people should have the burden of educating white people about racism. I don't believe that regular people should have the burden of educating billionaires about privilege. But if that's what Sam Acho wanted to do and that's what George McCaskey wanted to do, that's fine. Here's what George McCaskey said about it in June of 18. He said, Sam opened my eyes to uncomfortable truths. He counseled me, debated me, challenged me. Since that point, George McCaskey has been a proactive supporter of the team's social justice group. He obviously sat down in that incredible video where he admitted to the things that his grandfather had done when I had written my story as a response to my story. He led the creation of the NFL's new Workplace Diversity Committee. He oversaw the drafting of Justin Fields, which is the franchise's first true franchise black starting quarterback. And he oversaw the hiring of General Manager Ryan Poles. He did that by doing something that is actually noted in Flores' lawsuit as an area of relief, which is to empower black leaders in the organization and a franchise in these hiring decisions. He did this with Lamar Campbell and Tanisha Wade. The Bears have black leaders up and down the scouting department. General manager hired some black assistants. Now, I'm not going to give George McCaskey a big applause for doing things I think he should have done. I do think it's better than what most owners have done. But here would be my challenge if I spoke to George McCaskey, and I do have an interview request out to him. He has respectfully declined it. But if he were to accept it, this is what I would ask. The big question to me is, how far is George McCaskey willing to go to fix this problem? Will he speak on what he knows about league hiring? Will he talk about conversations he's had with other owners? Will he share information he has about sham Rooney Rule interviews? Will he participate in this lawsuit? If asked to testify, would he do so? I mean, he might have to be deposed. Would he participate? Would he step up and talk about what he knows? Because all of these owners, they have owners meetings, they all talk to each other. It is a big club, and there's somewhat of a new money, old money aspect to it. And George McCaskey, although he hasn't won a Super Bowl, his team hasn't won a Super Bowl in 1985, there's not a lot that's great said about him professionally. He still carries a lot of weight as the grandson of the founder of the NFL. And if George McCaskey were to sit down and give an interview, whether to me, whether to you, Santita, whether to Tribune, Sun-Times, Athletic, ESPN, doesn't matter who it is, his own ChicagoBears.com media company, if he were to sit down and say, these are the conversations that I've had with owners. These are the things that I've heard them say. These are the things that I know that they do. These are the conversations that I've personally witnessed or been a part of. These are the coaches I can tell you never had a chance when they walked in that door, which is what Brian Flores brings to light in his suit with the Giants and the Broncos. If George McCaskey stepped up and was the Brian Flores of owners, that might get somewhere to actually making change. And if George McCaskey is interested in having something better in this league, if that's what he's trying to do, part of the conversation in this country now around race is, white people saying, oh, well, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. It was my grandparents. It wasn't me. It was my ancestors. And you know what? Fine. And if there was actually a remedy situation, then that could be the case. George McCaskey is not his grandfather. He didn't do the things his grandfather did, but he has an opportunity to change things right now that are still happening. It's not about George Halas. It's about the current owners.
Hold that thought, because I want to talk with everybody on the YouTube channel, just on the other side for about 5 more minutes, everybody. Oh, great conversation. Stay right there, Jack. Stay right there, Reverend Doctor. Everybody, I love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow. God bless. And I'll see you at 11 o'clock at Jonathan Jackson's congressional announcement. Yay! See you later. Keep talking. Jack, because you make the point. Oh, no. Don't worry about it. You make the point, and as does Reverend Dr. Bryant, and it's Robert Patillo. Are you still there? Jerry, you still there?
Yeah.
No. Because you make the point. Yeah. I am not giving people the credit for what they have done right. Don't get me wrong. But it is so frustrating to see the core of the families who started the league. It's very, very closed. It's a nonprofit corporation, and there is no willingness to be fair, to open things up. And I have to tell you, it's offensive to me. It's always been offensive to me to watch all of these athletes drafted. I don't care what field they're in, because it felt like it looks like the auction block, the slave auction block, the whole language, the owners. It's just all of it's just way off to me. And something it has to evolve. Not just it has to get right. This is crazy. And when you're an insider, just like Gore Vidal as a writer, he grew up in the WASP establishment. And what was so magnificent about his writings is that he threw back the covers. He said, let me tell you how white Anglo-Saxon Protestants think. Boom. Which had people running for the hills. Right. But you're in there. And I'm not saying that you should betray people. Oh, no, I'm not saying that. But you should say, look, this is the mindset, guys. This is the mindset. And you know what you do.
He would have to betray it. He would have to betray people. Oh. That's what I'm saying. Oh. There was an interesting anecdote there was a book, Big Game, about NFL owners, published a couple of years ago. Looks at 4 years on the league. And it documents a league meeting where Jerry Jones, owner of the Cowboys, was trying to dictate to all the other owners something. He was like trying to run a meeting. He was kind of overstepping his bounds. And George McCaskey, who's not thought of as, an aggressive fighter, he said, listen, I don't answer to you. We answer to this committee, and I've been here a lot longer than you have, and so have the Rooneys, and so have the Maras. So this tells me that there's something in George McCaskey that there's some kind of level of pride of his family name. And perhaps there's just inkling in there with these acts that he's been doing. Again, I don't think they're all the most incredible, groundbreaking acts in the world, but they do show intention. And there have been some results. And boy, if George McCaskey were to come out and say, this is what I know, this is what I've seen, these are the exact conversations that I've had, it's got to start with the owners. And I don't know how you do that because they own the teams. But that is where it has to begin. And we're going to have an interesting situation with the Dolphins because one of the elements of the lawsuit that is potentially more explosive, less explosive, I don't know how you judge it, but one of the other elements of the lawsuit, and it's related obviously, is that Brian Flores says that Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, offered to pay him $100,000 per loss in his first season when the team was trying to get the number one draft pick. If that comes out, if that proves to be true, or if that reaches a conclusion where, yes, he did that, that would really be in conflict with the integrity of the game, especially because I read that Stephen Ross is an investor in a sports gambling company. So if you have an owner of a team paying to lose games and running a gambling company, that could potentially, I suppose, force a sale, just like we just saw the Carolina Panthers and Jerry Richardson and the sexual harassment. That forced a sale. Now, where does black ownership come in at that point? The gentleman made the point about Walter Payton and him being shut down. I don't know the answer to that question, but there are some potential dominoes at play.
Oh, there's no question. But, you see Michael Jordan, you see people, and fortunately now he, has some ownership in the league. They don't, it's closed. It is closed. And, in the psychology of having, to me, a white coach be in charge, and young white guys too, be in charge of these young black kids. Oh, no, I hope Brian Flores goes to an HBCU and shapes them. At some point, you just need to say, you know what, you got this. You know what, you created this league for you. Have at it. I love you. Let me go on and take care of what I'm creating over here. Because remember, there was going to be a Negro League and the white major league. But the compromise was, you know what? No, we'll leave this great business that black business persons have built, and we'll run over here because white folks' ice is colder, which is crazy. And I'm not saying that I'm for segregation. I'm not for that at all. But I don't think I need to break down what I've built to join what you've built. And you coming over into my backyard because you know that I'm producing not only great product, but more often than not, superior product to you. Oh no!
Let me ask the group this question: if a substantial number of, let's start with the NBA, where it's easiest because you have the fewest people on the court, the players are already empowered, people know them best because they're not wearing helmets, even baseball batting helmets. They're not in a dugout; they're right there in the bench. Let's start with the NBA. If NBA players left the NBA and started their own league and designated teams in cities, obviously, that were close enough to areas so that Chicago could root for the Quad City team, but you couldn't have a team in Chicago because, of territory rights. Mm-hmm. But if NBA players left and started their own team, a player-run team with predominantly black ownership, do you think that white fans would support those leagues if it reached a certain point where the majority of the talent was in the other league?
Who's still there? Yeah, Robert? Jerry? Who's there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Bryant. Who's still there? Okay. Jerry?
I'm here.
Yeah, no, I think, talent, the cream rises to the crop, right? To the top, right? So, if you got some and that's why they brought in black players, many years ago. Remember, basketball was an intramural sport, right? And look to what it's evolved to today. So, yeah, in an all-black league with black owners, and you played in respective regions of the country. White sponsors, white people would gravitate toward that. And again, as Santita talked about, is that they would try to lure the black talent over to the white establishment, as opposed to embracing completely the black the black league. So I do believe sponsors and white people would come over to the black league, but they try to implement it into what they've already established themselves, and that's what we see today.
Well, have you ever been down to the Bayou Classic?
Okay, I haven't been down there, no.
Oh well,
but
you need to see with HBCUs when you get down to New Orleans when they would fill up the Superdome when you have 100,000 fans, because that's a big deal. When you go to the South, college football, college basketball is king and queen. It is. And so I mean, the base is there. I don't need to. What black folks don't have to do. Aretha Franklin proved this to you. You don't have to cross over to white people to get wealthy and to be a legend. You really don't. You can just go on and do your thing. That's why Aretha Franklin took her time and did her thing, and people kept saying, "Oh, she's got man problems." Who doesn't have man problems if you are inclined toward men as a woman? No. What the problem they had is that she had a daddy who was rich, who was the biggest black preacher in America, and she could take her time and do her thing. That was the problem. At some point, what Deion Sanders is doing is truly revolutionary, because what he is doing is changing the mindset of these black players. He is telling them, go to the school, because in my father's day, 60 years ago, the top black players who ended up in the NFL and who ended up going into the NBA came from black colleges. And I'm saying all these billions that white colleges are getting y'all need to go to HBCUs and give them that money. Let's even it up. I am tired of going into the white workplace and begging for my due when I'm the talent.
Right.
You can't exist without me. For heaven's sake. And say, I don't have to be here. If I have my own thing, maybe you will respect me more. And I'm not going to do it for that. I just need to build my own stuff. And then we can compete with each other and we can have a great time. And then you know what? Eventually we can merge and do business together. But I'm not going to be your plaything. And we need to stop that. I'm not going to beg you for a piece of the pie that I made. No.
Right. But unfortunately, Santita, I mean, you look at the Negro League baseball, right? And the talent that was there. And the white owners say, hey, they can play. They're good. And think about it, over at Comiskey Park, they were drawing well over 60, 70, 80,000 fans over there to watch the Negro League games. And white ownership said, you know what, we need to get a piece of that pie, right? And so they Jackie Robinson, the whole 9 yards. But if you look at the number of African Americans playing Major League Baseball today, it's around 7%.
Because you know what they have done? They have purposefully decided not to look at black players in the United States. They've gone overseas. Lynn Coleman, who was the last president of the National League in baseball, had a very, very purposeful campaign to have little leagues in the inner city. And what did they do? The last nice little inner city little league team we had, the Jackie Robinson team, we took their championship from them because their parents had gotten gobsmacked in this economic downturn. And so these kids went to live with relatives and they took their championship from them. You know what? And if baseball doesn't grow, and they're wrong for that. They're wrong for that because they want to go to Venezuela. And why do they want to go to Venezuela? Because they don't have to pay as much. And they were angry with President Chavez. He said, no. Say if all these great players I have down here don't make it to the league, you need to come up with a plan to give them money. I want you to develop a fund for them to get money so that if they have abbreviated careers, at least they will have something to walk away from. That's why the white owners didn't like President Hugo Chavez.
Right. Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
No. Don't get me started, because I came here with receipts and some facts. I've done some studying on this thing, and I know the gamesmanship here, and they are playing games. This is terrible. You don't even have Black American players anymore. The Washington Post did an extensive series on that last year. Why don't we have Black players? You have Black kids in the inner city. It's cheap to play baseball, for heaven's sake. But they have removed it from here so they can go down to the Caribbean and to South and Central America. I use my words purposely because that's what they're doing.
No, you're right. Yeah,
and we ought to be against it. Whenever we see anyone mistreated, we should, given our history of slavery, and I don't mean the Black history of slavery, this is a collective American history. Given what we have done here, we are against any mistreatment, maltreatment of anyone, anywhere. Hello?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
No arguments here.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I'm sorry,
Jack. Jack.
Yes, sir.
I think you brought up, the Bears and George McCaskey, and I think you're right. I think the unfortunate thing is it starts at the top, as they say, and it's Virginia McCaskey. And I think George wants to evolve. He wants the franchise and the team and an organization to evolve. But I think Virginia, I think it stops there, and whatever she wants is what she gets. And I don't think she wants to see Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith was fired. He had a winning record. He had a winning record with the Chicago Bears. He took them to the Super Bowl, and he was fired. So I think George's hands are somewhat tied. You talk about betrayal, and I think it's because of the respect that he has for the name and for Virginia McCaskey, and why he doesn't really flex his muscles the way he possibly could.
And I can respect that.
Well,
yeah, I can respect that.
That's interesting, and we just saw last week with the Chicago hockey team and they called their town hall meeting, and the reporters from the Athletic and the Tribune, Mark Lazarus.
Yeah, Mark Lazarus. Yeah.
Right. So he opened it up, and what is lost a little bit in the Rocky Wirtz response is that his question was for Danny Wirtz, the CEO, Rocky's son, and Rocky cut him off. And then when Danny tried to answer the question, after 45 seconds, Rocky cut him off again. What's interesting to me, you bring up the impact of Virginia McCaskey. It might be now or never for George. This is something he wants to do, because there will be, when Virginia passes away, the McCaskey family, is going to be, they're going to face a challenge in maintaining ownership. Now, they've talked and said that they've figured out a way to do this. But when Virginia McCaskey passes away, the Bears are no longer, as an organization, going to have a majority owner under the rules of the NFL, because those shares are going to be split too many places. And there are probably, of the 9 remaining children, Virginia's 9 remaining children, there are ones that are more involved, ones that are less involved. I have to imagine that some of them would want to take a buyout, would want to sell. And then you've got what are now minority owners. Misuse of the word, I guess, in this context. But you've got Andy McKenna, and he's part of a group that owns 19.7%. When Virginia dies, he and his partner, I'm now forgetting his name, who's Pat Ryan, they will have a bigger stake in the Bears than any member of the McCaskey team. So it might be a fight to see who can buy up existing shares from the other McCaskey family members. And the McCaskies might well lose control of the team, depending on how that all breaks out. I mean, certainly an opportunity to buy an NFL team doesn't come along quite so often. Now it's just now happening with the Broncos for sort of the same reason, and Pat Bowlen has even fewer children than Virginia McCaskey. So if George McCaskey is really being tied down by his mother, but wants to push the Bears in a more progressive direction, it's possible that now's the time to do it, sir, because he's going to have a real big estate problem on his hands whenever she passes away, which will happen. She's 99 years old.
Oof. I didn't realize she was 99. Okay. Well, you know, I mean,
she's 99.
You know what? I think we're going to revisit this on Friday because we're going to go because we got the Super Bowl and a lot of people have a lot of questions, and this is a very exciting topic. So let me know if you have any time to be with us on Friday, Jerry and Jack, because this is a topic for our times. About basic fairness, how we want to proceed. It's not about building back better. I think that's a wonderful, it's cute, it's alliterative, but it's about building back correctly, building back right, get things right. I mean, there's a way, whether it's racialized or it's just personal, there's a way that people are supposed to relate to each other. You don't just exclude. I mean, if there was this young man who won the Heisman, a young white boy, and when I say boy, because he's young enough to be my son, young white man who spoke of poverty. It was about 2 or 3 years ago. It was before the pandemic, and I was so impressed with him. I'm just remember he won the Heisman. Oh boy. And he was.
It's funny. I stopped watching college football, and I don't have Heisman winners
on
lock the way I used to. If you talked about 20 years ago, I tell you exactly what it was.
No, it's okay. But he was so impressive because he dedicated his award to the poor people of all colors in the city or town that he came from. See, because my thing is, I think having black ownership is important, but more than that, I think having fair ownership is most important. I don't want a black tyrant. I don't want a white tyrant, a brown one, red one, yellow one. I want people to go into business having learned from everything that your forebears went through. Because everybody's in the United States because we are trash. We're refuse. We've been thrown away. Now, can we learn from that, please? And build a more perfect union? And learn how to treat each other? And learn how to be fair? Come up with a new way to employ people. Of course, the boss is going to make more money than the rank and file. But you don't have to be so greedy that you're taking everything from the rank and file. I mean, it's just crazy. Henry Ford figured out, you know what, I have to pay my assembly line workers not a living wage, a prosperity wage, because we're all going to grow. They can buy the cars that they make. And so I pray for the McCaskey family. I'm wanting them to come around and to make things right. But I say that for everybody, and in every endeavor. I mean, that's all I've got to say, you guys. I mean, because it's just
I think you're talking about Joe Burrow.
Yes.
With LSU.
Yes.
Tigers.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
He's playing. He's playing in the. He's playing. This kid is going to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Unbelievable. But the unfortunate thing, Santita, I mean, it's, people get blind by the money, and it's divide and conquer. And I won't give any names, but I know a guy who was making six figures in the industry, in the radio broadcast industry, making six figures. They tried to. And they took the money from him, but they used another African American up and coming guy and say, "We're going to give you $80,000."
I've seen it.
Yeah, and so that they could get the difference from the six figures that this established guy was making.
I've seen it, and you know what, Jerry, I can stop you right here. We're not going to move forward. We're not going to be blessed until we do things right. Period.
Right.
We can keep on playing this game.
I agree with you.
No, I'm just saying, you can keep on playing this game. You can keep getting bought out, selling other people out. You're not going to win. You're not going to win.
Right.
And you shouldn't.
Right.
You shouldn't.
Right.
On principle,
Right.
there's some things you ought to just say, no, that's all right.
Yeah.
And until we have the wherewithal, the courage, and the character, more than that, to do that, we're going to be right where we are. And deservedly so. Deservedly so. Why should God bless you when you're doing wrong? God can't do that.
Right.
God can't do wrong. We
Right.
do wrong. You can't be blessed. You can't move forward until you do right. Period. Have we not learned anything? When the world has been shut down, only God could do something like this. I don't care what mischief people are saying is out here. You know what? We got shut down. We needed to have a think, and we're still here. So you're not going. You're not going to get. You're not going to go right. And that's why I thought that young man Joe Burrow has stayed with me. He has stayed with me because I heard him when he gave that speech when he got that Heisman. I said, "Oh, he gets it." I said, and I pray that God will give him every blessing. Around a lot of poor black kids who have won the Heisman or who have been drafted, and they don't have the inner something that Joe Burrow has. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And however he got there, I'm with it. Now to support him. I support that. I support that kind of thinking. I'm not going to support a black tyrant and bury a white progressive. I won't do it.
Right.
No. Someone who's no. I'm not going to do that. I am not going to do that. I'm not that. I don't do skin politics. I don't play that.
No, that's good. That's good.
No, I don't play that. Now either we're going to be fair, as my mother would say. Either we're going to be fair or we're going to shut this down.
Right.
My
God
mother.
Bless your mother.
I got that. You know that. And my mother is
mother.
like that. She is like, hey, either this is going to be right. When my father was running for president, she said, either you are going to be unlike anyone who's occupied this office, so we need to go home. She said, no, you're not supposed to be like the oppressor. You're supposed to come up with something new. So I'm not going to celebrate anyone who exalts the old order. I'm going to celebrate who's coming into the new. And that's it. I don't care what your color is.
Right.
But I'm gonna have to give you all 2 minutes apiece because I got to run downtown and then I got to go be with my brother. Oh my gosh!
Everything all right?
Oh, my brother he's running for Congress and he's going to announce at 11. So I need to make a quick run before. Thank you so much for asking. Before I go join him today.
Yeah, of course.
But I wanted you all.
I have nothing. It's just a beautiful conversation. I've said my piece, and I always appreciate not just being invited and you thinking of me, but also being able to learn from and converse with all the people who you bring onto your show. So that's the delight for me.
Well, my delight is that people get a chance to hear history from you, and I know when I showed Reverend Jackson your article, he was so impressed with you, and then when you came into the studio. We were so impressed with you and remain impressed that you want to present, that you have sought to present the history so that we can get our thinking right, so that we can understand where we've been and so we can understand where we're going. I appreciate the fact that Jerry put so much into his work and really understands the politics of sport and understands the social significance and cultural significance and impact of sport and continues to push out these stories. I appreciate you both, and I appreciate the whole panel because I just think it's a conversation that's worth having. It's a conversation worth having, but I want to thank you both and everyone who was on the panel today. Thank you all so much. A couple of people on the panel, I hadn't planned for them to be there, but they reached out just before I got on there. I said, okay, but I really want to thank you both. And I hope that you'll be available on Friday because unless we go to war or something, I certainly want to talk about this in advance because we don't know. I want to talk about this in advance of oh my gosh. Ugh. I want to talk about this in advance of the Super Bowl because we will be thinking football. And I just, I'm just praying that Brian Flores and his family will be lifted up and we'll just continue to go forward. Because, and is he going to take a hit? Sure. But he's going to be exalted in the end because he is doing something that is bigger than him, and it's better than him.
Yeah, yeah.
It's bigger.
He said if it makes an impact and makes a difference, it's worth it.
And it is.
And you got to commend him for that.
And it is. Yeah. It is. He's doing the right thing. He's going to be just fine. He should go to an HBCU and coach. And he and Deion Sanders and these other people need to go back to these HBCUs and coach and let them build some stadia for 100,000 people or 60 or 50, 70, 80,000 people. And because I have been down, because my father took us to Southern University and we saw those classics where you saw 100,000 black folks who were excited about the game and tailgating. I grew up with that. And I'm so glad our parents had the foresight to take us into that so that I wouldn't look at Harvard and say, you're better than Howard. No. No, not when Dr. King came out of Morehouse. No, Morehouse gave him what transformed the world. Dr. Benjamin Mays shaped him. And so many people. You need to, and everybody appreciates their corner of the world. I'm just asking for black people to appreciate ours. Because when we fully appreciate our corner and what we've developed, then we can be a full human race. We can't be a full human race when you have some 3 people who feel that they're 3/5 human and some people who feel they're 7/5 human. It's just not going to work. We're not going to be right until everybody's right. That's how it works. So I hope let me know, Jack and Jerry, if you're available on Friday, because I think we need to continue this conversation because this is very important because our kids play sports. And these are the things they have to deal with when they're playing in grammar school, in high school, and certainly in college. This is when they start dealing with these coaches and the politics of sport. They deal with this very early on. And we need to talk about it.
That's right.
We need to.
Right.
We need to. This is not, because all of my brothers went to school on football scholarships. I get it. And one of my brothers went to UVA, a Division I school, and Jesse and Johnny went to a black school. And there were different challenges, but I got a chance to see that. So, but I love you all. I'm going to run on out of here. And thank you all. But let me know if you're available on Friday. Please let me know.
Yeah.
And I love you all. Love you, Jerry, my first boss, Jack, and I love you. Thank you for the work that you both do. God bless you. Devin, thank you for another great show.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Jack, I love an opportunity to talk with you more. You're fascinating. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm around.
We'll be in contact.
I'll connect the 2 of you. God bless.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Santita.
Thank you. Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Santita.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, Jack.